This morning, in his opening remarks introducing his new deficit reduction plan, the president showed that he gets the joke about Republicans.
A week ago today, I sent Congress the American Jobs Act. It's a plan that will lead to new jobs for teachers, for construction workers, for veterans, and for the unemployed. It'll cut taxes for every small business owner and virtually every working man and woman in America. And the proposals in this jobs bill are the kinds that have been supported by Democrats and Republicans in the past. So there shouldn't be any reason for Congress to drag its feet. They should pass it right away. I'm ready to sign a bill. I've got the pens all ready.
I've got the pens all ready. You see that little smile about having the pens all ready to sign his jobs bill? A bill the Republican House of Representatives would have to pass? He knows that's a joke, and he rightly intends it to be a joke on and about Republicans. Of course, Republicans will not support the proposals in the president's jobs bill that they used to support in the past, because now that the president has made those proposals, Obama proposals, Republicans have to be against them, even though they used to be for them, especially the tax cuts in the president's jobs bill. So the president has now made it clear that if he cannot beat the Republicans at their silly games in the House of Representatives, he will humiliate them for playing those games. He will take every opportunity, as he did this morning, to show voters that House Republicans are standing in the way of economic progress in this country and need to be removed from office in the next election and replaced with a Congress that has not signed its brain away to Grover Norquist's anti-tax pledge.
Anyone who has signed some pledge to protect every single tax loophole so long as they live, they should be called out. They should have to defend that unfairness. Explain by somebody who's making $50 million a year in the financial markets should be paying 15% on their taxes, when a teacher making $50,000 a year is paying more than that, paying a higher rate. They ought to have to answer for that. And if they're pledged to keep that kind of unfairness in place, they should remember the last time I checked, the only pledge that really matters is the pledge we take to uphold the Constitution. Now, we're already hearing the usual defenders of these kinds of loopholes saying this is just class warfare. I reject the idea that asking a hedge fund manager to pay the same tax rate as a plumber or a teacher is class warfare.
That is not the talk of a president who is trying to thread the needle of compromise with his opposing party in the Congress. That is the talk of a president who wants to fight first and legislate later. A president eager for compromise, a president eager to make a legislative deal, does not call out the legislative leader of the opposing party like this.
Last week, Speaker of the House, John Boehner, gave a speech about the economy. And to his credit, he made the point that we can't afford the kind of politics that says it's my way or the highway. I was encouraged by that. Here's the problem. In the same speech, he also came out against any plan to cut the deficit that includes any additional revenues whatsoever. He said, I'm quoting him, there is only one option. And that option, and only option, relies entirely on cuts. So the Speaker says we can't have it my way or the highway, and then basically says my way or the highway. That's not smart. It's not right.
Not smart, not right. The president doesn't come out and call the Speaker not smart, not right. In other words, stupid and wrong when the president is trying to make a deal with the Speaker. The president is trying to humiliate the Speaker, and the Speaker has no better response than an empty slogan.
Well, I don't believe that class warfare is leadership. And, we could get into this tax the rich, but that is not That's not the basis for America. And it's not going to get our economy going again.
Presidents who are trying to negotiate a legislative deal with the opposition do not issue veto threats on day one.
I will not support any plan that puts all the burden for closing our deficit on ordinary Americans. And I will veto any bill that changes benefits for those who rely on Medicare but does not raise serious revenues by asking the wealthiest Americans or biggest corporations to pay their fair share.
The president knew Republicans were going to call that class warfare. But with an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll showing that 81% of voters agree with the president's position on the rich paying their fair share, the president knows if he can't win this argument with a Republican House of Representatives, he can win it with voters in November of 2012. Joining me now is Gene Sperling, Director of the National Economic Council and Assistant to the President for Economic Policy. Thanks for joining me tonight, Gene.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you for having me.
Gene, you put this package together with the Obama team and the president, and I've seen a lot of these packages put together. This does not look like a package designed to appeal to the opposition party in Congress. This reads to me like a package that is, in effect, a presidential manifesto saying this is the way I want to do it.
I would slightly disagree with that, Larry, Lawrence, in the following way. I think this was a deficit reduction plan and an American Jobs Act that he proposed earlier that does speak his values, but it is very much speaks to the mainstream of the United States, the mainstream of American workers out there. As you just said, the overwhelming number of people in our country believe that if you're going to do long-term deficit reduction, there has to be shared sacrifice. They are for spending cuts and spending constraints, but as the president called for, they don't believe you should put all the burden on the middle class, on seniors, on the most vulnerable, and then ask nothing from the most well-off. So this isn't about class warfare, as they say. It's about what our country's always been about, and that's shared sacrifice. And you and I both know that there are Republicans in the Senate. There are Republican experts outside, business people, who would agree that you have to have a balanced plan, and that has to include revenues on the most well-off together with spending cuts. So I think what he's done is speak to the mainstream of America. He has spoken his values, and I think by putting out something that's balanced, I think it is going to cause a convergence, and I think there will have to be those who come and work with this president because we've got 9.1% unemployment, 14 million Americans out of work. Are they really going to say that they're going to oppose the president's plan to cut payroll taxes for every worker and every small business? Are they really going to say that laying off hundreds of thousands of teachers in our schools right now is not a problem? I really think that when they hear from the American people, you're going to see them come towards the president, and we will have a chance to get some meaningful progress this year.
Well, Gene, the president is in a re-election campaign, and it seems to me that the threat that he's laying down today is, look, Republican Congress, you can cling to your very, very, very unpopular position here as long as you want to. I'm not moving off of this point, and I will take this, as they say in the Capitol. I will take this to the voters. That's the inside the game threat when people in legislating are saying to the other side, if you want to continue to fight this way, forget about what happens here in the Congress. We're going to take it to the voters. It seems to me that's what I was hearing the president say today. He is ready to take this all the way to the voters next year if he has to.
But I want to make very clear, we need the American Jobs Act. We need the 1.9 million new jobs that is projected to create in 2012. We need to get something done. That is our aim. Of course, if people stand in the way and there is higher unemployment and less growth and less people working because people blocked the will of the American public and stood in the way of the kind of compromise the president wants, of course he will make that point. But I do want to make clear that with this kind of pain in our economy, with people suffering, this president put forward an American Jobs Act that, as you said, included not only infrastructure, school construction, putting teachers back to work. It also included a payroll tax cut that virtually every Republican, including Michelle Bachmann and John Boehner, have supported repeatedly. And you have to ask them, does a tax cut for all middle-class families become a bad idea just because President Obama proposed it? Are you willing to block even tax relief that experts say would create 600 to 1 million jobs, just the tax relief portion, just because President Obama is for it? And are you really going to betray the bipartisan areas that you and I both remember Democrats and Republicans used to work together on, like transportation and infrastructure and putting people back to work when you've got 9% unemployment? I think it's going to be very hard for them to just say no. I just do not believe doing nothing is going to be an option for them.
Jane Sperling, director of the National Economic Council, thank you very much for joining us tonight, Jane.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.